Regulatory and institutional framework. The regulatory and institutional framework. Now, as we spoke in the previous video, we had looked at the introduction part 1, and this is now our introduction part 2. And here I want to look at the regulatory and institutional framework as part of our introduction to public sector financial management. Now, regulatory and institutional framework, we shall be looking at the framework. We shall be looking at the framework that guides the public sector financial management, that guides the public financial management. The framework that guides public sector financial management, and also its environment. We shall also look at and its environment within which public financial management is done. Its environment within which public sector financial management is done. Within which public financial management is done. So, of course, this is the public sector financial management, and of course this includes the legal framework. It includes the legal framework. It includes the legal framework. Of course, within the legal framework, we have the laws, we have the policies, and the regulations. Of course, the laws and the policies, those are the regulations that guide the public financial management. Of course, within the laws, policies that govern or that guide the public financial management, we shall look at a number of different laws and regulations. Of course, I can mention some of them right here, but we shall go deeper into the different laws, the different regulations that are available, that are guiding us in managing the finances within the public sector. For example, we can talk about what we call we have the Public Finance or the Public Financial Management Act. Of course, of 2015. Public Financial Management Act 2015, which actually makes the overall guide of public management. This one does the overall guide of public financial management. And you must know that whenever you mention an act, there is also what we call a regulation. Once you mention an act, it means there is a regulation. So we have a Public Financial Management Act 2015, but that same law, you expect for it to have a regulation. An act may be brief, but a regulation is what explains, it gives the detailed analysis of what the law is actually talking about. So the regulation, because an act is a little bit brief, as I said, but the regulation gives details, or it expands the act, meaning that the regulations puts the act into practice, and it guides on every bit of that act. So that's a regulation. An act is very brief, but the regulation gives you the practical aspect of every bit of the law. So there are certain things that the law may not cover, but you will find them being covered in the regulation. And at the same time, you may find that in some regulations, some regulations may not cover much of the things that are supposed to be covered. Of course, once the act is there, the regulation gives you the practice of every bit of the things that are supposed to be done according to that act. Then, once certain things are not detailed, or once certain things are missing within the regulation, then you'll find that in the manuals. They are called manuals. We shall cover also manuals in details. We shall also look at the different manuals that we have. But also, as I told you, of course, the regulation, this is Public Finance Management Act of 2015. Then the regulation is actually the Public Finance Management, Financial Management Regulation. This is of 2016. Of course, we have other acts. One of the acts that we may be having, that one may be number one. The other act that we may be having, we shall look at the Local Government Act. Local Government Act of 2003. 2003. Of course, we also have the Local Government Act. Because we are basically trying to look at the financial management point of view, we shall look at also the local government. Permit me to abbreviate government like that. Local Government Finance and Accounting Manual. Let that be the accounting. We have also manuals, but as I said, once you see the act, there is a regulation. This is Local Government Finance and Accounting Regulation. Of course, this is of 2004. So these two are related. Once you see the act, It means the regulation will come into actually, this is the regulation, this is the act. They are related. So we shall also cover what we call the local government finance and accounting manuals. As I told you, once certain things are not clarified by the regulation, you'll find them in manuals. And the one for local government, we have what we call the local government finance, local government finance and accounting, local government finance and accounting manual, or you can call it local government financial and accounting manual. So that's, of course, when it comes to local government, we have also these other policy manuals. We have also policy manuals. We have also the policy manuals. So there are very many manuals, as we shall see once we start looking at what manuals are. But as I said, for local government, of course, you'll see that all of it, all this information, all these regulations, all these acts, all these policies are helping us to be able to manage finance within the local governments. Remember, we said local governments are actually public sector entities. So, the Local Government Act 2003, the Local Government Finance and Accounting Regulation 2004, and then the Local Government Finance and Accounting Manuals, plus the policy manuals. Those are the ones that are helping us to be able to know how to manage the finances of local governments. So that's all for the local governments. But as I said, there are very many acts. There are some acts we are going to be dealing with that are actually managing part of some of the activities that have been done within these public sector entities. There are some acts that are going to be dealing with what we call the procurement and disposal. There is an act that is dealing specifically on that. It's called PPDA. That is Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. This is Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. This is PPDA. Of course, this one has its related regulation. That is Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Regulation. Public Assets Regulation. That is the PPDA. It has also its regulation. This one gives you a highlight, what is supposed to be done. Then the other regulation gives you how you are supposed to do that very item that has been talked about in the act. But the good thing with this PPDA, we have a process, because this PPDA has a lot of regulations. There are very many things that are within the public procurement and disposal of public assets. Those government assets, whether they are old cars, whether they want to buy, whether they want to sell, whether they want to get suppliers, whether they want to sell off all the government assets, the process they go through, it has a lot of regulations. We have around 11 regulations for this. Over 11 regulations that are going to be covering what we call the PPDA process. For you to understand this, you'll understand it as a process, not understanding it as just understanding maybe dispose of, let's say for assets of local government. It's a process. Once you want to understand it, you should understand it as a process. You get it in your mind that I'm dealing with a process. It has a starting point and it has an ending point. So that's why we are seeing it has a lot of regulations. So we shall understand the process from the point where we are initiating the process to the point where we are awarding and managing of the contracts of governments and its agencies. How do we manage the contracts that the government has, maybe with the public or with its related agencies? And that process is governed by very many regulations, as I've talked about. For example, some of the regulations that we have that are trying to manage this process, we have that deals with the evaluation, the PPDA evaluation regulation. We have the one that deals with the administration of those contracts, PPDA administration. Let me just call it admin regulation. We have the one that deals with the contracts regulation, PPDA contract regulation. We have the one that does the costing, the cost accounting. We have where you try to look at the costing mechanism, the cost accounting mechanism of how do we attach certain values on a given contracts. So there are very many, and we are going to cover these. Of course, we are not going to cover everything, but we will pick what is relevant, even though our syllabus, much as it appears to be a little bit detailed when it comes to the PPDA process, but we shall pick what's relevant, because as I said, it has a lot of things that we can't cover, but we shall pick what is relevant, because as I said, our syllabus for this tries to look at it as if it is a very detailed. It appears to be so detailed, but it's not as detailed as it is once it comes to the exam. So it's a little bit brief once you look at the once you look at it from the examination perspective. So sometimes we have to go beyond what we may see on the syllabus, because you may see certain things on the syllabus, but once you look at the past paper questions, you try to find that it is actually digging deeper into what the standard or what the syllabus is actually portraying. So certain things we shall go deeper, other things we shall ignore. So we pick out things that are going to be relevant to our syllabus. So we shall be following our syllabus and also borrowing a little from what we see what has been happening in the previous examinations, and we try to leverage on what we have, because as I said, it is very wide, but you need to know from the beginning that it is a process. Once you understand it as a process, it will be very easy for you than just picking out key things within the process. So we shall go deep into some of these regulations and acts as we progress, specifically for for let's say the PPDA, because we really need to internalize it. Therefore, I think those acts or those regulations are enough for now. But you have to understand that these acts are quite many. They are very many numbers. If you look at the local government, if you look at the public finance and accounting, if you look at these PPDA, the acts are very many. But remember, there are those that we haven't even spoke about, like the Constitution itself. The Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Of course, the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Of course, this is of 1995. We also they are also the Accountancies Act. Of course, this is of 2013. And of course, there are many more, as we shall keep on seeing. We shall be seeing them once we try to reach at some of those different aspects. So I was trying to throw more lights on the regulatory framework. I was basically looking at the regulatory framework, where we picked out the legal aspect, and we tried to look at some of those acts and the regulations. So we've been looking at the legal framework. But remember, our topic has been the regulatory and institutional framework. So we may have the whole act, but we may have the institution itself having the different things that they are following that are institutionally, that are supposed to be followed by the institution, because these institutions are going to be within a given sector. They may be in communication, they may be in education. There are certain things that are supposed to be followed in education that is different from what the media people will actually follow. So that's why we are looking at, we've looked at the whole thing, the acts that are governing the entire thing, like the Constitution. Everything is supposed to be below that. So we've looked at those. the regulatory framework, and this was all about laws that govern the public finance management. We are not picking out the entire laws. We are picking out laws that are in relation to public financial management. Something that is outside that, we don't really focus on it. But now let's look at what we call the institutional framework. The institutional framework, and here we shall be looking at the institutions. What are some of the institutions that are responsible for ensuring that public funds are managed well? Here we are basically looking at the institutions responsible for managing public funds. Institutions responsible for managing public funds. What are these institutions that are responsible for managing public funds? These are going to be the institutions that are going to be responsible to see that the money, the public funds are managed well. What are these institutions? These institutions, they are also going to be following the other laws. They are the ones that are going to help them manage the resources of the public. And these institutions, we are looking at the key players in the public. Of course, we need to know the key players in the public finance management, public financial management. And of course, these may be like in terms of offices, they may be authorities, they may be agencies that are going to be monitoring the operations of these other entities. So these may be offices, like offices of the accountant general, offices of the accountant general, offices of the auditor general, and also the internal offices of the internal auditor general, We shall look at the laws and powers of these entities. What are they supposed to be doing? We have also offices of the accounting officers, or we can call them accounting officers, offices of the accounting officers. We shall look at some of them, the accounting officers of the different public entities, where we shall later learn that in these public entities, they are already, they call them votes. They call them votes. Not these votes we are casting, but they are called votes. We shall understand what votes are, but just know any entity that receives money from the consolidated fund is called a vote. It has an appropriation from the consolidated fund or from the treasury. We can have the secretary to the treasury, the offices of the IGG. So they also do such activities to make sure that the public funds are managed well. So every entity that gets money or that gets funding from the consolidated fund is called a vote, and each vote is managed by at least an accounting officer. They call them accounting officer. Those are, if you go to ministries, they call them permanent secretaries. If you go to local government, they are the cow. They are the ones that are accountable for that very vote. So these accounting officers, though they have different titles depending on where they work, but in the financial management language, they are called the accounting officers. And those are basically the heads of those entities in regards to public finance management. For example, as I've said, if you look at the ministries, these accounting officers, they are called permanent secretaries. If you look at the district local governments, they are the CAO, chief administrative officer. And if you go to agencies, of course, agencies, we have the executive directors. Those are the accounting officers. For agencies, those are the executive director is going to be the accounting office of that vote. And that's basically the institutional framework. But not forgetting the parliament. And the parliament is the one that has those oversight committees like the COSACE, like the budget committee, the audit committee, the accounting committee. The parliament has those different committees that are actually responsible for managing, for seeing that these operations are actually moving better. So all these branches of the parliament have their powers, and that they have their roles and powers in regards to public financial management. But now you'll understand the public sector management is divided into two, where we are looking at the central government, and then we look at the local government. The central government, those are the ministries, departments, agencies. Local governments, we have, I think all of us, we know what local governments are, because it's majorly the districts. But within the districts, we have municipalities, we have sub-counties, we have divisions, and others. So as we look at the institutional framework in the central government, we shall also look at the institutional framework in the local government. So, for example, once you look at the local government finance commission, the district local council, the chairman,